Hey guys, welcome back for our new EBT update. We have got a lot of news to cover today. Some of it is fantastic and some of it not so much. Some people are going to see their benefits increase, which is great, and other people are going to see cuts, and that is so very hard. It just depends on where you live. Now, there are a few different factors that are going to influence these changes and how they apply to you. I know you're all very worried about your benefits, and I want to make sure that we're helping you cut through that confusion. So we're going to break all of this down in this video in a way that is clear and hopefully very easy to follow. So let's start with the big one that's going to affect the most people. The USDA recently announced a final rule that is going to change how SNAP benefits are calculated for a lot of users. And wait, if you think you can skip this because you watched our recent video on how SNAP benefits are calculated, you would be wrong. The update from the USDA came out after we had already produced that video, so these changes are new to us as well, and they weren't included in that update. So here's what's happening. Right now, it's up to the states to decide how they want to calculate the utility deduction. If you remember from that earlier video, deductions help offset your income so that less of your income counts against you. Basically, this means that if you're paying more in utility costs, you should not have that income counted against you, and that should help you get more in food stamps. Or at least that's what it's supposed to mean. Some states use a fixed amount called a standard utility allowance, or an SUA, instead of using what you're actually paying for utilities. And there are no rules or regulations about how states calculate these SUAs, and that means that some of those utility allowances are way out of date and wildly inaccurate, and some are honestly a bit ridiculous. That's why the USDA has issued a new final rule that is going to standardize how states handle the utility deduction. This new rule has a lot of elements that will impact the final calculation of your food benefits. So for today's video, let's just look at those most impactful ones. First, your internet service will now be recognized as a basic utility cost in the SNAP calculation. That means that it will count toward the utility deduction, just like your water, electricity, and other utility bills do. Now, next, the new rule gives states specific guidelines to follow when calculating their standard utility allowances. The rules allow states to tailor their SUAs for different areas to show variations in local utility costs. There is some flexibility there, but these new guidelines should help make those SUAs a little bit more reasonable. And third, the new rule also requires the states to submit their standard utility allowance calculations to the USDA every 5 years or so for review. States are also ordered to adjust their SUA rates annually to account for changes in utility costs, which should help them stay more up to date. Now, the Food and Nutrition Service estimates that most SNAP households will not experience any change in their SNAP benefits as a result of this rule, but around 30% of households are estimated to see an increase in their benefits after these changes are made, which is great, but around 5% of people may see a decrease, which obviously means that these changes could potentially result in you getting less benefits when they're enacted. But the USDA was quick to warn everyone that the actual impact will depend on how your state chooses to calculate their SUAs. And because the states have to implement that, they don't really know. They're just kind of guessing at these numbers. So the changes will also not necessarily come quickly. The USDA has given states until October 1st of next year to finalize and implement their new updated SUAs. And I'll make sure to keep you updated as we see those announcements and changes being proposed and made. And I truly, truly hope that this ends up being good news for all of you. And of course, unfortunately, this isn't the only change that could result in cuts to your benefits too. Starting on December 1st, the Healthy Incentives Program in Massachusetts is slashing their benefits by about 50% or more. The program has provided $40 to $80 per month for healthy food purchases at certain vendors, but this month the maximum benefit will be capped at just $20. That is a big cut for the individuals and families who have relied on this benefit, and it's honestly coming at a terrible time. Seeing those drops right around the holidays is very disheartening. Of course, we've also received some mixed news for EBT users with kids in Iowa as well. As you might have heard, the governor there proposed using the summer EBT money to send food boxes to families instead of providing the standard $120 in extra benefits per child. So under Governor Reynolds' plan, instead of getting that $120, families would have to pick up 3 food boxes a month instead. The USDA said no to that, and they gave a few specific reasons why they said no. For example, they said that they have data showing that the summer EBT program reduces hunger, and the state of Iowa didn't offer any evidence that their plan would have better outcomes. They also said that the summer EBT cards are mailed to families, which is much more convenient and accessible than the governor's plan to force families to pick up their food boxes in person. The USDA also pointed out that they already have programs that distribute food at specific locations, and that those programs typically have very low levels of participation because it's very hard for those families to get where they need to be when they need to be there. Now, ultimately, Iowa's plan would create a demonstration project, and Congress has stopped funding those, which is another reason why the USDA said no. Now, at this point, anti-hunger advocates are pushing Governor Reynolds to opt into summer EBT for 2025. The paperwork that is required to opt into this is due on January 1st, so it's important that the state act quickly to make that happen. However, Governor Reynolds has said that she will resubmit her proposal once the new administration takes over to see if she can get a different answer. And there is potentially more bad news on the horizon as well. And this one is about what happens if your SNAP benefits are stolen. And I hate bringing you guys bad news. Before we get into the details on this one, can you just drop a comment below and let me know if your benefits have ever been stolen? And if they were you able to get those replaced? How did that go? I'm really curious because right now, if someone steals your SNAP benefits, maybe through card skimming or some other kind of fraud, you can usually get those benefits replaced. This is thanks to a special temporary rule that Congress created a little while back. But here's the problem. It's a temporary rule. That rule is set to expire on December 20th of this year, so just a little few weeks from now. And that's not good. After that, it's unclear whether you'll be able to get your stolen benefits replaced anymore. The good news, though, is that Congress has already acted to extend this once, so they may do it again. This replacement program was actually supposed to expire at the end of September. You may remember me telling you about that. But then it was extended with just days left to go. It's entirely possible that the program will be extended again, but there's no guarantees that that will happen. And obviously, if it fails to be extended, that's going to be really difficult for people who are already struggling. Losing your SNAP benefits to theft is bad enough, but not being able to get them replaced could be absolutely devastating. Of course, you can take action to help ensure that this program continues for those who need it. You just need to contact your representatives in Congress and let them know how important this vital lifeline is for so many low-income families. And you can go to congress.gov to find the names and contact information for those representatives as well. Now, the good news is that the government is taking other steps to help curb the fraud, finally. The USDA recently announced that they are going to introduce some new protection for EBT cards. In certain areas over the last few years, several states have developed special controls that allow their EBT users to block out-of-state transactions. And this is extremely helpful because most of the skimmers send your information out of state and then your card gets used across the country somewhere. So in a recent press release, the USDA said that they were starting a new pilot program that would reduce the amount of out-of-state benefit theft. The new pilot would automatically block out-of-state transactions by default. Now, you could choose to enable out-of-state transactions if you want to, but your benefits would be protected by default unless you intentionally took action to enable those out-of-state purchases. I think this would be a huge step toward helping your benefits be more secure because a lot of people just don't know that the option to turn off that feature exists. So if it's turned off by default, I think it's going to help a lot of people protect their benefits. Now, the USDA secretary also sent a letter to different state governors encouraging them to implement chipped EBT cards. And this is something that's already been talked about in several states. California is currently working on this. The USDA recently revised technical standards so that states can create cards with chip technology, just like you already have in your debit or your credit cards. States can choose to roll these out, and if they do, they get reimbursed by the federal government for about 50% of the overall cost of that change. Now, the letter that the Secretary sent out says, quote, "This advancement makes it possible to align SNAP EBT technology with credit and debit industry standards. This means that SNAP cardholders can and should be afforded the same preventative protections that other cardholders are afforded under credit and debit industry standards. The industry shift toward chip cards has proven an effective method to safeguard card usage from theft and default. Therefore, the USDA strongly urges all states to adopt the new EBT standards and to work with your EBT processor and SNAP retailers in your state to transition to SNAP chip cards as soon as feasible," end quote. I think that's great. I absolutely believe that EBT cardholders should have the same protections that debit and credit card holders do. But in the meantime, it's important to know what you can do to keep your benefits safe. EBT users in Alabama and Louisiana and other states are reporting insane surges in theft. One person in Georgia called their local news and reported that their benefits had been stolen for 3 consecutive months in a row. So I just want you to know, change your PIN every 30 days to help prevent theft. Because if someone clones your card and they have your card number and your PIN, they can just keep using those benefits. The best thing you can do is change your PIN every 30 days, but change it immediately if you find out that your benefits have been stolen. Also, you need to remember to call your local county office to report that. Some users in Alabama are calling the number on the back of their cards, but local news provider WVTM found that that number actually leads to the company that makes the cards and not the government that issues the benefits. So make sure you're calling the right number if you do experience a theft. Now, before we wrap up for today, I do have a few more updates that may be interesting to you. We found several new museums that are offering EBT discounts now. The list of new additions includes Lowell Observatory in Flagstaff, Arizona, the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles, California, the New Britain Museum of American Art in New Britain, Connecticut, Hillwood Estate Museum and Gardens in Washington, D.C., Amesbury Carriage Museum in Amesbury, Massachusetts, and the Industrial History Center, also in Amesbury, Massachusetts. Coos Art Museum in Coos Bay, Oregon, or the Oregon Jewish Museum and Center for Holocaust Education in Portland, Oregon. The Pottstown Children's Discovery Center in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. The Tennessee Aquarium in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I love aquariums and zoos, so I get really excited when those come up on the list. Food and Farm Exploration Center in Plover, Wisconsin, Huey's Hideaway Children's Museum in Medford, Wisconsin, and the Mulva Cultural Center in Des Peres, Wisconsin. Now, all of these have been added to our list of more than 1,000 EBT discounts nationwide at lowincomerelief.com/EBT, so please go check that out. Now, I've also noticed that DoorDash has introduced a 1-year discounted Dash Pass for people with EBT as well. You can get it for just $4.99 a month, and of course, this will help you get those $0 delivery fees and lower service fees on eligible orders. It looks like DoorDash has also made it easier to comparison shop for items between different stores as well, which is a great feature when you're trying to save money and use those benefits wisely. Let's see, we've got a couple of other updates here today. So Oklahomans affected by the storms that struck several counties between November 3rd and 4th of this year can apply for replacement SNAP benefits until December 2nd. Affected counties include Muskogee, Cleveland, Garland, Lincoln, McLean, Oklahoma, Stevens, Adair, and Logan counties. You can get help filling out the form by visiting the Oklahoma Human Services Office or by calling 405-522-5050. And if you know a hungry college student, please make sure to let them know about SNAP benefits as well. A recent Government Accountability Office report showed that only around 33% of eligible college students are getting SNAP benefits, which means that about 67% are missing out. Also, please make sure you go check out our Fast Facts channel for another important update that you won't